show themselves approved unto
He would have very clearly said yes.
Remember, we have to avoid rationalistic thinking. Let's look at what the scriptures say. Okay, first of all, I'd like to point out that in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, Jesus is spoken of, and it says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes unto you. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass." He is just and having salvation, lowly. He's not coming with horns and trumpets and banners and all of this other stuff and saying, "Worship me, I'm God." He's coming lowly, riding upon an ass, a colt, the foal of an ass. Okay? This prophecy is speaking of Jesus.
I am God. He would not have told the Jews when they said that you call yourself God, he said, you say that I am. He would have very clearly said, yes, I'm God.
We'll find that verse in Matthew chapter 26 that he's talking about where he tells the Jews, you say that I'm God. Well, actually, what he does is he says, you're saying correctly that I am God. Okay? It's in verse 64 of chapter 26. And it says, the first part is 63. And it says, Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that you tell us whether thou be the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus says unto him, thou hast said. Okay? Now, you could take that pretty much as either way you wanted, but it says, you have said. All right? Now let's just go take a look and interpret that by what he said earlier in verse 25 to Judas, the one who betrayed him. All right? It says here, this is when he's saying, the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto him, thou hast said. Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him. And we know that he betrayed him. And he's stating right here, you have said it. And down here, he's telling the Jews the same thing in verse 64. He's saying, thou hast said. But then he adds a little note. He says, nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter you shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. So he's saying, you judge me now, but there will be a time when I will judge you. Okay, reading in context, one verse down, we look at the word blasphemy. And the word blasphemy is when we speak out against God. The high priest rent his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now you have heard his blasphemy. They are accusing Jesus of blasphemy because of what? Because Jesus had said, you have said. And he's telling them, you have spoke the truth. They don't rent their clothes and yell about blasphemy just because of some silly comment. They yell and they speak of blasphemy and pick up stones to kill people when they have claimed to be God. So again, Jesus didn't deny being God. He didn't say, you said it, I didn't. He said, you've said rightly. You've said the truth. All right. Let's go a little farther.
And I'm here to save you from your sins. He never stated that in anywhere, and it's never referenced in any scriptural text of any religion whatsoever. So therefore, if God is so explicit about his nature, why when it comes to him becoming a man, why did he not explicitly state so?
Explicit, meaning
Explicit.
that it's lucid, it's clear,
It's clear cut and to the point.
Unambiguous,
Yes.
something unequivocal.
Okay, first of all, lucid, clear, unambiguous, unequivocal. I know that it's unambiguous and it's explicit, the verses that I've shown you. The fact is, Jesus spoke in such a way as to say he was God, and I will show you those verses. And Jesus never said, worship me. No, he did not. But I will show you many, many verses where people worshiped him, and he never turned it down. And being a man of God, if he wasn't God, he would have turned it down because God shares his glory with no man. And then, no explicit statement ever. I've showed you explicit statements, and we'll see even more.
It's not something that you need a scholar to interpret. If God's nature was that he was coming in the form of a man, he would have made it so even a 5-year-old child could understand.
Let's be fair. Now, I want to be really fair, all right? We got some theologians, some Bible scholars that will come and disagree with you. They say, you know what? John 1:1, the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word became God. Another
the Word
one,
became flesh and dwelt among us.
and then I am, before Abraham was, I am. Now, me as a layman, personally, you know, I don't really, if I'm reading that, it's a little bit ambiguous, but you go ahead and comment on this.
Well, that also comes from what standpoint you look at those verses as.
First of all, I'm not just pulling two verses out of my hat and telling you that these verses say that Jesus is God, but all of them together do. And any one of them separately, if you really look at it, would say so also. However, you have to ask how many times somebody has to be told something before they'll believe it. Once, twice, 10, 20. Okay? The point is this. Let me show you what they're talking about. Okay? Well, first of all, we'll go to John chapter 8, where the I am statement is made. This is a very interesting statement. I love this statement. It is definitely unambiguous and it is explicit. This is Jesus saying, "Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad." He was talking to the Jews that were in authority. Then the Jews said unto him, You're not yet 50 years old, and you've seen Abraham? And here it is. This is the kicker, folks. Jesus said unto them, Truly I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. All right, this word for I am is ego eimi. This verse basically says, before Abraham was, and that word was is before he was created, before he was made, I am, I exist. Let me show you something. There it is. This is eimi. The last part of that word, am, is eimi. Ego eimi. The word ego is I. And this word is I exist. And it's used only when it is emphatic. And this is an emphatic verse. This is a present indicative verse. And this is emphatic. This is stating, before Abraham was, I exist. Okay? So this is stating that before Abraham ever was born, Jesus existed. So then let's see what they do. They then took up stones to cast at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. So they knew what he was saying, and they picked up rocks to kill him because of what he said. And later on, we'll see that same thing happen again, and we'll see them explain why they picked up rocks. In Exodus chapter 3, where God himself says, And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me. So Jesus was actually using a play on words. He was saying the very thing that God said, I am hath sent me unto you. But he was also saying, before Abraham was, I exist. Those are those two verses that they say theologians will come along and use and twist and everything else. I'm not twisting anything. I'm just giving you the facts. Now, let's go to John 1:1 and see exactly what that verse says. It says, In the beginning was the Word, and that word is logos, and that's used to refer to Jesus. John uses it quite often to speak of and use about Jesus. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Now, here's interesting things. It says, All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. If you remember the first verse I showed you in this study, it was Genesis 1:1, and it said, In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So if that's true, and then it says here, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made, we can see that the writer of the book of John, the Gospel of John, also believes that Jesus was God, because he says he created everything. And he also says the Word was God. So these are clear and they're unambiguous. But people have to want to believe the truth. Either that or they want to believe a lie. If we look at John 1:1, we'll see that he was in the beginning with God. All right, that's answer number 9.
Study to show